I'm not going to point that one out.
Good evening. We have the mics on. All right. All right, let's settle down. Thank you very much. Well, welcome to our open council meeting. I'd like to acknowledge that we're holding this on the traditional lands of the Klamath Nation. We're going to start with some general opening comments. So we have two film groups in the audience tonight. We have Global, and we have a collective that are preparing a documentary owned by the Klamath Nation on the discussion of a name change. With regard to the audience, this may look like the Patricia Theatre, and you may choose, if you're at the Patricia Theatre, to applaud, sneer, whatever. However, this is not the Patricia Theatre. So I'm going to ask that everybody be respectful. And by definition of respectful, it is quiet. So there will be an opportunity at the end of the meeting for anybody to ask a question related to any of the agenda items. But I would really appreciate it if I did not have to use the gravel. It makes a terrible noise in all of our ears. So thank you for your consideration of the protocols of our meeting tonight. So let's start with the adoption of the agenda. Oh, I thought, okay, are there additional announcements? I'll start with Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I'm happy to announce actually the Regals actually have a game this week. It is the first of a 5-game series against the Nanaimo Steelmen, and it is for the West Coast Senior Hockey League Championship called the McCallum Cup. So game 1 will be this Saturday, February 17th at 7:30. Games 2 and 3 will also be here in Powell River on March 8th and 9th. And the following 4th and 5th games will be in Nanaimo. And so come on out to cheer on the Regals this week. Also available, the Regals are hosting the Koi Cup, which is the BC Provincial Senior Men's AA Hockey Championship. That'll be the last week of March, the 26th to the 30th. If you're in school or have kids in school, it's the second week of spring break. And the passes for that are currently available. It is an 8-game series. You can get a pass for all 8 games for the low bargain price of $80. Cash only. You can get them at Tawes, The Peak, or Royal LePage. And it's going to be a great week of hockey. And come out. You can also get the passes this Saturday at the game as well. So come out this Saturday, get a warm-up, and join the Regals at the Koi Cup as they look to become provincial champions once again.
Thank you. Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor Wasno. A couple events happening before our next council meeting. So next Tuesday evening at Powell River Public Library is a local author talk by former City Councillor Caroline Leishman, who wrote a book called Under Paris Spies. Under Paris Spies. It's a sexy spy thriller. And so that's next Tuesday, the 20th at 7 p.m. at the library. And then on Thursday, there's a really neat event. I missed the last one, but I hope to go this time. An artist trading card night at the bowling alley. And the idea behind it is you can bring the descriptions on the Facebook event, but you paint or you draw or you create art of a certain size. I think it's like a business card size. And then you go to this event and trade. And so you create art, other people create art, and you trade with people to get art that you like. So pretty neat initiative. And then next Saturday, the 24th, we had a delegation on Tuesday announcing it. And I want to reiterate, we have a Black History Month event at the It's happening at Carlson Club starting at 12 p.m. and it's free. There'll be food and cultural displays, and I think it'll be a great initiative. And just a reminder for those who aren't aware, the last Sunday of every month, there's a coffee house at Cranberry Hall, and 7 p.m. is when the sign up happens. So if you play a little bit of guitar or music and want to, or if you read beat poetry or want to share a short story, it's a great place to connect with other people and have a good time. So that's 7 p.m. sign up at Cran Hall on Sunday the 25th. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
Nothing tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Southcott. Councillor Elliott.
I have no announcements tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Palm.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to follow up on Councillor Almeida's announcement of the Regals. Those games take place this weekend, correct? And the majority of that team is made up of our local boys. So please, if you're needing a little entertainment in your life, get out and cheer on our locals. And it's nice to see the Regals making a comeback. You know what? We all know they have a rich history. And secondly, Your Worship, for those of you that are traveling in and out of this community, I received a couple emails from our Ferry Advisory Committee today, and the frustration is rising as to delays and whatnot. So if you are traveling out of town, please check your websites and make sure that those ferries are running, as it's getting a little dicier all the time. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. All right, we'll now move to the adoption of the agenda. Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Mayor. I am happy to move the agenda with a couple of adoptions that council has in front of, a couple of amendments that council has in front of them. The first amendment would be to add to correspondence number 5.3, which is a letter we all received via email today from a group of members of the Select Committee on City-Owned Properties. And the second amendment is a reversal or a switch in the order to move 11.3 and 11.1 to follow bylaws section 9.2, and then proceed with 10.1 and 11.2 in that order.
Secondary. Seconded by Councillor Southcott. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion is passed unanimously. Go now to the adoption of the minutes for the January 23rd, January 25th, and February the 1st special council meetings. Yes.
I'll move adoption of the minutes for the special council meeting January 23rd, special council meeting January 25th, and regular council meeting February 1st.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Dowd has seconded it. Do we have any discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Now move to delegations. The first delegation is George Wall and Lorian Exter from the Cathette Museum and Archive Society Board. Welcome.
Between us. Hello, thank you very much, councilors, Mayor Wasnow. I'm not sure how aware you are of the operations of the museum. The museum is run by the Cathette Museum and Archive Society Board and has done so since 1967. We're very fortunate to be leasing a building from the city. However, we need your help. We need the help of the Cathette Museum Archive Society Board needs help to continue to operate the museum by paying for asbestos remediation. Based on an understanding that the Cathette Museum Archive Society Board we believe we have with the city. We believe the board is at a risk of liability due to the city's lack of action over a 30-year period. I'm going to give you a little timeline just to kind of bring you up to speed on some of the recent happenings in that 30 years. The archive is quite full and was the shelving was inadequate. We were able to use some funding in order to upgrade our shelving, and that requires drilling into the floor of the building and into the walls in the basement where the archive was stored. So the museum board's due diligence, we had everything tested for asbestos because no installer would even think about coming in there without this knowledge. We were notified that the city had known that there was asbestos in the building in 1990 when we presented to the city, there's asbestos in your building around October of 2022. We met with city staff in October in 2022. That would have been Scott Randolph. And I believe I have some emails who else was potentially in there. I wasn't in those meetings because Bill Vernon was the president of the Museum and Archives Society, and he has since resigned. We officially received the asbestos report on Christmas Eve of 2022 from the city's paid consultants, who the city basically realized that the last report being in 1990 was not adequate for drilling that would need to happen in 2023 or 2024. So the update came. The initial inspection from the report that was issued in December of 2022 found that the flooring in the archive room was fine. It was actually not fine. Once we removed the shelving and the archive out of there, the asbestos tile was damaged, leading us to need to remediate the asbestos tile before any further work could be done in there. So the city sends us a letter in January of 2023 that we believe accepts some responsibility for the asbestos remediation. There are numerous meetings over the next basically 12 months where it's like pushing the blame one way or another. Who's going to cover this? Who's not going to cover this? We kind of draw a delineated line on the Museum and Archives Society will be in charge of moving all of the artifacts and moving all of the shelving. And of course, we are paying for the shelving. And the city would be responsible for the asbestos remediation of that archive room where the shelving needs to be installed. Lack of action during from basically January of 2023 to December 2023 led the board to make some decisions. And we also accrued a significant cost increase on the shelving unit and the cost to install the shelving, about $40,000 increase over the time when we wanted to have it installed. We would hope to have this wrapped up by 2023, end of business, but that didn't happen. January, we submit another letter to the city to let them know that we are going ahead with the remediation in that room because no work can be done until that remediation is finished. We'll never get the shelving installed without it. It was the total of around $6,500. The museum.
That was the remediation cost.
That was the remediation costs from Assured Asbestos. That work is now done. So we're asking for a reimbursement of that $6,500 and also a plan going forward for further asbestos remediation because the report that was issued to us shows high risk of exposure and high friability in both the Centennial Building and the museum building. So the board feels that we're at an undue amount of risk with the now known knowledge of asbestos in the building where our staff work regularly and museum patrons visit regularly. So, Mr. Exter?
Well, that's basically it.
Yeah, and I have an email chain and numerous other items that I would be glad to submit to council for their review in a package. I didn't get it put together in time to submit to be on this agenda. So,
There is one thing.
yes, sir.
There's
In
been,
microphone, please.
oh, sorry.
Yep.
Lauren Extra, I'm the secretary of the board. It's become a critical issue because there were some inquiries made about insurance, and it would seem that we would not be covered by either municipal insurance or our insurance, and so the board members would be personally liable for any suit brought, and so that eventually led to a decision that we would all resign if we didn't, if we couldn't have some satisfaction about the liability issue, which, according to the letter from Scott Randolph, would be borne by the city, which we believed. That's basically it, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
All right, I'll ask council if there are any questions. Yes, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report that you received about the asbestos, was that turned over to our staff so that, is it available to all of us?
Yes.
Yes, that report was actually done by cities, like the city hired that consultant to come in. So the city
okay.
had the report and delivered it to us.
Oh, okay,
So-
okay.
so Scott Randolph told us that we would have it at the end of November with a plan from the city. That's in emails.
Right,
And then we got the report the end of December, and then January, there was still no plan from the city. February, still no plan from the city. Ongoing yada in perpetuity till we had a meeting in January of 2024 where city staff told us that any remediation would be our responsibility.
okay, thank you.
Yes, Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor Wasno. I'm wondering, ultimately, we want a museum that's operational and that upholds the history and archives of our community. And I think that's in your interest, and I think that's in the city's interest. And so I think I would need to understand from staff where they would need direction to find options to move forward. I have a sense of what work staff has done, and I do want to give staff a bit of grace because we've had a lot of turnover in leadership, and so there have been delays in a number of areas, and Scott Randolph moving on, and so I trust staff that are working as quickly as they can given the circumstances and are trying to protect the city's interest and taxpayers' interest. So I want to acknowledge staff for that important work that they do. So maybe my question through the chair or through the mayor to staff is, where would you need to seek direction from council to move in a direction that current policy doesn't support, or what sort of options would, like, what can we do?
Through the chair, you can request that staff put time into staff report, and that would look at not only the museum, but other properties that you lease and the implications of diversion from policy. Thank you.
Councillor Palm.
Thank you to the chair. Gentlemen, thank you for your presentation. It sounds like you're caught between a rock and a hard place at the moment.
That's exactly my thought.
And I don't know all the details. I would like to encourage staff to bring a report forward for all of us to have a detailed look at where we're at, and maybe we can help you out in some regard. I'm not sure yet where we're going to go on this one, but we'll do the best we can. And we really appreciate you being here tonight to make us aware of this, especially when it not only affects the museum, but a great many buildings that are under city direction that happen to be aged
right.
out. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Councillor.
Okay, I will make that motion to direct staff to prepare a report to council on options and potential consequences of finding a solution to support the Museum and Archives Society. Is that sufficient?
And other properties.
Yes, seconded by Councillor Doudt. Any further discussion? Councillor Elliott.
So I just wanted to make sure that it was going to be the same as our CAO mentioned and include other properties of a similar type that we own so that we understand the scope. And I don't know if we need to change the motion, just that would be good.
Your CAO, is that sufficient?
To check with our corporate officer what we have.
Through the chair, the original motion specifically referenced the Museum Society, so I think it'd be helpful just to make an amendment to include all properties.
So I'd move an amendment to include the other properties that are in a similar state.
Seconded by Councillor Doubt. Any Councillor Doubt?
I just want to make sure that we don't end up asking the planning department to do a study on all the buildings of the city that's going to take 3 years to do. When I get the impression from the museum board that they need a decision fairly quickly. You know, I think I heard that the board is resigning and that, you know, they can't access the archives right now. So I'd like to have a thorough report, but I don't want to see council waiting 3 years to get the report on when we can, you know, there obviously is a remediation report on those 2 buildings that they talked about already, and that might be one of the more simple ones to deal with.
Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor Wesno. Yeah, I don't think I support this amendment. I think in my motion, when I talk about consequences, I think what I actually meant was implications, and that applies to, you know, if we make a decision that relates to asbestos in one building, what might the implication or fallout be for other buildings? And so my intention for the motion was to consider that based on the way that staff described what a report might include. And so I don't want a report covering all the buildings in the city, but if there are implications for the decision that expand beyond this, I would like to know.
Right, through the corporate officer deputy, could you read what you have now in front of us?
Yes, Chair. So at this time, you're voting on the amendment motion to also include in the report other properties that are in a similar state.
Okay, could you help me out? Was there a seconder of the amended motion?
Yes.
All right, any further discussion? We'll vote on the amended motion. All in favor?
The amendment.
On the amendment, yes. All in favor? All opposed? The amendment to the motion is defeated. We will now move to the motion. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion? Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll now move to item 4.2, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing this name correctly. It is a delegation, Catherine Jorleifsen.
Mayor and Council, my name is Catherine Jorleifsen, and I live here in the city. Before I begin my presentation, I would like to firstly acknowledge that I live here in the traditional territory of the Claman people. Second, I would like to thank the young members of our community that spoke at the Committee of the Whole meeting 2 days ago. I don't agree with much of what they said, but it is the role of the young in our community to shake things up, to question, and push hard for change, so I thank them. Third, I would like to thank Councillor Palm for his 14+ years of service to this council and city. So, I'm here today to talk about strategic priorities. Like many in our community, I watched and listened to the January 30th Committee of the Whole meeting. I listened to all of it, beginning to end. I'm quite glad that I did, because I find I have some pretty strong ideas and opinions about strategic priorities 2024 to 2026. I sent each of you an email on February the 6th with my comments and my priority list. In that email, I said that the list is too long, the list is too wordy, and the list is missing an important item. Since then, I've continued to think and work on these. So today, I put forward these thoughts with the express purpose of asking Council to return to the drawing board and fix the strategic priorities for 2024 to 2026. So, I cannot lie. Ms. Google and I had a session in 2 parts. I did this after I sent you the email. So my first was, what is a priority? Some great definitions come up. If something is a priority, it is the most important thing you have to do or deal with, or must be done or dealt with before everything else you have to do. Or quote, priority is not a synonym for important. Something can be important without being the most important. Quote, as a principle, it means doing first things first. As a process, it means evaluating a group of items and ranking them in their order of importance or urgency. The trick is to identify which task is important to accomplish and which task is urgent. Often we believe we're getting things done just by being busy. The second thing I pondered, how many items should be on a priority list? Some quotes. As author and business consultant Jim Collins famously said, if you have more than 3 priorities, you don't have any. Quote, narrow down your strategic priorities to a maximum of 5 items. A long list of strategic priorities may overwhelm your team and slow communication. Give each priority clear instructions on how to achieve it. The 3 to 5 in 3 to 5 rule. 3 to 5 strategic priorities in that many years. See them through until the end. Don't swap them out for new ideas the following year as though they're dispensable. They could lose credibility. Quote, and even shorter answers to keep the number of strategic objectives to less than 6. And the last quote is my favorite. With 2 to 3 priorities, you'll likely achieve all of them with excellence. With 4 to 10 priorities, you will likely achieve only 1 to 2 with excellence. With 10 or more priorities, you will be unlikely to achieve any with excellence. This is your list of strategic priorities. There are 15 on it. So, my comments specifically on strategic priorities 2022 to 26. The strategic priorities should represent the most critical areas of concern at this time for our city. We have issues that are emergencies. Only these should make the list of priorities. These priorities are also for less than 3 years. I only hope to move forward significantly, on these items in this short period of time is to be sure the list is short and only 2 priorities for today are on that list. I propose the following 3 strategic priorities for 2024 to 26. 1, B for budget. A city budget begins with revenues before tax and expenses. The difference between these 2 is tax. R minus E equals T. The council, city staff, and residents need to clearly understand that Powell River taxes are almost the highest per capita in the province. Our city budget must quickly come into line with the reality of significantly reduced revenues with the mill closure. Every effort in every department is to be taken to significantly reduce expenses. Some changes will happen over a much longer period of time than any one budget year or one 5-year plan. Plans are to be presented by city staff and put in place to begin such processes. B, every effort in every department is to be taken to increase revenue. In the end, there will be taxes. R minus E equals T. Economic growth is a significant item in this priority. We need to recognize that the economic health of the city is at serious risk. Number 2, H, for housing. Lack of housing and housing insecurity is an emergency. Strengthen the words from the proposed priority list, which were, quote, create a housing authority working with partners to create sustainable, long-lasting, affordable housing protected from speculation. Add to that to be more inclusive of all housing options. We have children in this community going hungry every day because the cost of putting a roof over their head is sometimes greater even than 50% of that family's income. C is for climate. Climate and the environment are in crisis. Continue working towards climate change mitigation and adaptation by strengthening our commitment to decrease city GHG emissions and by updating bylaws and pursuing opportunities with climate resilience in mind. Zero emissions by 2050, but we must not wait on anything until 2049. Maybe number 3 should be number 1. Maybe number 2 should be number 1. But these are all so interrelated, and they represent the 3 priorities of our community. We cannot deliver housing without money. We cannot reduce our GHG emissions without investing in new technologies and getting rid of old. People living in inadequate, precarious housing will be hard hit as climate crises escalate. These are my 3. B, a secure, sustainable financial position. H, affordable, good, secure, sustainable housing for everyone. C, climate action on all fronts. If we all work together with a clear, fixed agenda on these 3, we can make changes for our future and for the future of new generations. We will meet the stated objective from your list to provide facilities and staff for recreation and culture activities that define our community and make it where people want to live. So, Council, will you return to the drawing board and fix the strategic priority 2024 to 2022 list? B, H, C. My question.
Thank you very much. I'm can only say that of all the presentations I've heard, I appreciate the succinctness and the thought that's gone into this one. I will now ask Council if they have any questions for you. Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you. Not so much a question, but just appreciation for coming up tonight and the appreciation that you express to others. It can be very nerve-wracking to speak in front of council, especially when we have a big audience. And so I do appreciate you coming up, and also appreciate that you have views that are we don't often see shared in one person. And so, like, you know, where you're going and then you veer in another direction. And it was really enjoyable to see, and that people are complex and there's not just 2 perspectives on how our community should be. We contain multitudes. So I just wanted to appreciate that. I think your questions will be answered when we discuss the strategic priorities later in the agenda tonight. But I appreciate you sharing your input today and through email as well.
Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Mrs. Hurlison. I also appreciate the amount of energy and commitment you have put into contributing to our community and the work of council for years. But I hate that word but, because it negates what comes before, right? And I don't want to negate that. It's not my intention at all. I've been involved in various strategic plans. These strategic priorities, we actually only have 4 on the list before us tonight. And I think that the priorities, they're very simple. There are goals beneath them. We didn't in this list define them as goals, but in previous strategic plans that this city has done, we have defined them as goals. So goals are not a work plan. A work plan comes contingent on those goals, and some items on a work plan are phenomenally more important than others. Housing and finance is our number 1 central responsibility of this table. So in my heart, I can absolutely assure you that nothing is more important, because it's the nerve center of everything we can do. And these people at this table all are deeply committed to fiscal responsibility. So healthy community, environmental resilience, economic vibrancy, and intergovernmental relations, I think those priorities actually cover what you are wanting from us. And I think that we can be consistent with your desires as well. So this is what I think, and I really appreciate your contribution. Thank you.
Okay. See no other questions for this. Oh, sorry, Councillor Tom.
Your Worship, I just
Question?
a few words, and it's not a question, but I just want to, I'm going to call you Catherine because
Please.
I'm going to mess up your last name. I'm being a little in trouble for messing up names lately. So Catherine, I want to thank you because you've been coming in here for years now, pointing out our financial welfare and where we stand on a number of budgetary items. And you're always here coming in with your signs and your placards and all the rest. And I very much value your input. And when you refer to priorities, and we've got 3 years left to do some business, I very much hear you tonight. We need to get those priorities in line because priorities are not a strategic plan. And when we started this process over a year ago now, we were working on a strategic plan. We're still fumbling around with priorities at the moment, and I apologize for that. We need to come together and get our house in order. I hear you, and we will attempt to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Budget.
Great.
Byron. And there's only 3.
Thank you. We'll now move to correspondence. Item 5.1 is a proclamation, which I'm going to read. It has to do with Heritage Week. And whereas Heritage Week is held to recognize the histories that make the foundation of our community, connecting citizens through shared values, and creating a place of pride and social well-being. Whereas heritage creates and encourages economic activity, job creation, and tourism. Whereas our community is enhanced and sustained by its heritage places and spaces. Whereas our community celebrates the past and future by embracing, exploring, and enjoying our enduring heritage. Whereas preserving heritage places is a key element of building a sustainable community. Whereas we acknowledge that all people of our community contribute to our rich and cultural heritage. Whereas we recognize our cultural and natural heritage are irreplaceable sources of life and inspiration, our touchstone, our reference point, our identity. Be it resolved that I, Ron Wasno, hereby proclaim February 19th to the 25th, 2024 as Heritage Week in Powell River. We'll now move to item 5.2, which is a report received February 1 from Vancouver Coastal Health regarding protecting population health in a climate emergency. Yes, Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor Wasno. We received an embargoed copy before it was distributed to the public, and I asked for it to go on the agenda because I had some I guess questions for staff, and I was thinking of maybe, bringing forward a notice of motion, but I had other things taking my time up this week. So I, for those who haven't read it, this is a document from Vancouver Coastal Health, and they did a bunch of outreach and research related to what the effects of wild smoke and heat domes, et cetera, on our populations, and any recommendations that they have in order to make sure that our residents are protected. I know that, for example, people who are in buildings that don't have access to any sort of cooling infrastructure really suffered, especially seniors or people who are living on higher levels of buildings, of multifamily dwellings, really suffered. And I think that we are going to continue into the future having challenges like that, and I'm interested in exploring ways to support our residents and being able to thrive even when we're experiencing climate change impacts. I'm wondering, just a specific question for staff. One of the recommendations, or a few of the recommendations, relate to updating municipal codes or bylaws or rental standards to require cooling or other building bylaws related to smoke and the ability to protect residents from smoke. I'm wondering, through the chair or through the mayor to staff, if this is on your radar, where does some of the heat dome and wildfire impacts fit into the work that you do in proposing bylaws to council based on plans or initiatives from the government? I'm just curious where this fits into planning, or at what times would you need direction from council to move in directions like this?
Through the chair, I'll start off and then I'll hand over to Director Gao. So many of the recommendations you have here, some are things that we can do directly as a city, others are in partnership. This is a document that contains many things that the city is already working to in terms of mitigation and adaptation. So things like looking at planning to prevent flooding, inundation. Then we also have work, and why I'm speaking is there's several departments besides Director Gao's that are involved in these elements, and including our work with Cathet Regional District around wildfire mitigation, emergency planning. So I know I've often said the official community plan is an opportunity to move forward, and then you've also identified several bylaws that we can review and update. And then there is just part of our ongoing planning processes where Director Gao and his team are continually looking at some of these pieces within the bylaws we already have that give us those measures. And then you can also see there's also elements around our partnerships with other agencies and supporting them in what they do to help people who may be more vulnerable to heat. So I'm wondering if Director Gao has anything he'd like to add. Thank you.
Through the chair to Councillor Isaacson, I will just touch on the anticipated 2024 BC Building Code that is soon to be released, and it's our understanding that there will be a requirement for a cooled room in every new dwelling. Now, unfortunately, what that doesn't do is address the existing buildings in our community. And so not unlike STEP code and how we incentivize builders to go above and beyond the BC building code, that may be another tool that we're looking at as a way to work with other groups or other either developers or property owners in the case of an existing apartment building. At this point, that's kind of the extent based on myself and the CAO's comments, but maybe I could plant a seed. I mean, one of the things the report does touch on is the impact of extreme heat and what street tree planting does for communities where we do experience extreme heat. And one of the things the city owns a lot of is asphalt paving. And that is something that warms up in those moments. And currently the city operates without a robust street tree planting program. And that is something that council could direct staff on, especially through the process of developing an official community plan.
Thank you. Oh,
Through the chair, I also want to highlight that we are part of an regional extreme temperature risk assessment and planning project. And so that is currently underway in partnership with Tla'amin, Kathat Regional District. And I think also that might include Vancouver Coastal as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions, comments? We will receive that report. And we'll move to 5.3, which was added, which is a letter received February 15th, 2024 from Stephen Miller regarding the Select Committee on City-Owned Properties. Councillor Isaacson.
I think we can address this in the agenda item that we have related to city-owned properties. So I'm happy to defer the discussion to that until that time.
The additional, all right. We'll move now to committee, committee reports. We have the Committee of the Whole meeting, January 30th, 2024 minutes. Councillor Doudt.
The question for staff, Mr. Mayor, is usually these committee reports are minutes that have been approved by the committees, and I see the agenda lists them as draft minutes. So are they draft minutes or are they minutes that have been approved by the committees?
Through the chair, when the agenda was published, they were draft, but they were adopted on Tuesday, so they are no longer in draft.
So they're not draft minutes, they're approved minutes. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just was going to speak to the Committee of the Whole since that's because I was the chair. So that was the meeting where we went and had a workshop to amend our draft, which is on the agenda today. It was a well-watched meeting, and we also had we had not a lot else happened on that day other than that workshop, and that is because it was a long meeting. We talked about the AVICC resolutions that we wanted to support moving forward to AVICC, and then we adjourned at 7:47.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to mention that one of those AVICC resolutions had to do with housing. Since it came up earlier tonight.
Great. Thank you. We'll now move to 6.2, which is the Select Committee on City-Owned Property meetings held June the 28th, 2023. We have the minutes, and I'll ask the Deputy Corporate Officer to confirm, are those draft minutes, or are those?
Mayor, those are the ones that were adopted.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll move to reports for decision. Item 7.1 is the City of Powell River Accessibility Plan.
Through the chair, I'd like to thank Ms. Laporte for her work in partnership with others to get this through. So over to her to present this briefly. Thank you.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Long time no see. So I'm back again about the accessibility plan as legislated by the province to have in place by September 1st. So we're a bit behind, but on January 25th, the accessibility, the Joint Accessibility Inclusion Advisory Committee approved the plan at their last meeting. So most of the information is in the report. This will serve as a living document that can be adjusted as needed based on feedback from the public and advisement from the committee. Further to what's in the report, this last Monday, the library board did adopt the plan, and it's intended to go to the regional district at the end of the month for adoption. And then it's a 3-year plan, so it will be given a full revisit with the committee in 3 years. However, each organization will be reporting to the committee quarterly on their progress to stay on track. So it is attached in your agenda package, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor Wesno. There are implications, obviously, to this accessibility plan that come with a price tag. I'm wondering, is there clarity on any funding from other levels of government to support the city in implementing some of the recommendations?
At this point, no. As they roll out the enforcement of the Accessibility Act, we're hoping that once they move to enforcing implementation of the plans that we've had to produce, that funding will come with it. There's little bits here and there that we're looking into, nothing very large scale at this point. We're hoping it comes forward.
Thank you.
Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Mayor. I really like the report. It's comprehensive but concise. And but there's just one little thing that I've got a bone with, and that is on page 11 under Who We Are, City of Powell River. The first bullet point says oversees and provides services to almost 14,000 residents within city limits. And although that is true, the city also provides services for the whole region. I'm specifically thinking of the rec complex, and it just feels to me like it's leaving out the fact that the city really does, we provide more than just to 14,000 residents. That just seemed to be a gap for me. I don't know if anybody else might feel that way, but anyway, thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Your Worship. Really happy to see the plan come forward. Accessibility is one of the things I care about a lot. I wondered if the scope of the plan was mainly focused on physical accessibility and mobility, or if other accessibility challenges were considered for maybe neurodiverse people or sensory issues on public buses or things like that? Or was that outside the scope of what we're looking at as far as the legislation goes?
Through the chair, certainly not outside the scope. We have a very active and passionate membership on the committee, all with lived experience, either with disabilities or supporting people with disabilities. So that those were all considerations. So I know a lot of the plan is quite policy focused, which the changes to policies want to, I mean, built environment is a large part, but things like applying for jobs or paying for services online. We'll be looking at all kinds of different types of disabilities, which definitely was a point made by the committee. When our first draft that we brought to the committee, it separated out by all the different types, and it just looked really convoluted and it was quite hard to follow. So we organized it differently, but those are definitely considerations.
Okay, thank you.
I understand there's a significant number of members of our community that have contributed to helping us understand the importance of accessibility. I would like to acknowledge the work that Dave and Marg Hodgins have done for a long time through a number of variety ways, including the Seniors Center. So do we have a motion?
Did you want me to read it?
Please.
I move that council adopt the accessibility plan as attached to the February 15th, 2024 report.
Seconded by Councillor Almeida. Any further? Yes, Councillor Isaacs.
Thank you, Mayor Wesno. I mentioned on Tuesday that I attended the most recent committee, and I highly recommend. I think council received an invitation to the next one, and so if you can make it, it was very informative to me. I wanted to mention a couple of things that came up at the last meeting, just for council's awareness. One was, I think some of the items that were of real concern to some of the members are included in the plan, but not necessarily specifically referenced. So for example, on page 21 of the plan, it talks about, review all existing plans, policies, and procedures to ensure they follow the accessibility policy, or incorporate an accessibility lens in all future strategic plans, policies, and strategies. So they're not super specific. They're kind of all encompassing. And I think that some members of the committee, for example, wanted to get deeper into building bylaw stuff, and that might be covered under those items. Some of them felt that they couldn't dig in enough into some of the areas. And so in adopting this plan, I just want, if we do adopt it, that council understands. I think the committee feels there are some limitations to their work, and some of them want to dive deeper into certain areas, but this is a living document and things may be updated as they go along. And also for members of the public, I think one of the larger items of discussion for this committee was their interest in hearing more from members of the public who experience barriers because of disabilities or care for people who do, and they're trying to figure out what public engagement or public awareness of their work might look like, because if they are the key ones who are recommending changes and following progress to the ways that our different institutions ensure accessibility to all, that I totally lost my train of thought here. Anyways, they I don't even remember how I started that sentence. So basically, I think there's more work that they may do over time, and I think it's really great for us to stay up to date. So anyways, we'll reiterate that I highly encourage council to attend one of their meetings if they're able to. Thank you.
We have a motion on the floor. Any no further discussion? Oh, Councillor Southcott.
Councillor Isaacson reminded me of a question that I was going to ask that I actually wrote down here, but I didn't ask. And that is, and it has to do with that same page, where it says, review all existing plans, policies, and procedure to ensure they follow the accessibility policy. But I'm not familiar that we do have an accessibility policy. And is that intended if we don't? Or is there accessibility language in other policies that we have? And I'm aware that our building bylaw is under review right now, so I'm sure that it would be considered, that the accessibility requirements would be considered when it is.
It says to develop one.
Accessibility policy. Oh, I should have read the first. Sorry, disregard that question.
So for the audience,
any further discussion before we have the motion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll now move to reports for information. We have the reports from the municipal directors of the Cathet Regional District. Yes, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to try to be the first one today and get as much as I can. If I miss anything, I'm sure Councillor Doubt will help me. So we had a board meeting and we supported an AVICC resolution to restore funding for libraries that came from a different municipality, which I don't remember off the top of my head. We made a decision to register directors at the AVICC conference. We made a decision to ask staff to work with the Pell River Community Forest and Wildlife Services on a fire department initial attack response capability. And so that was thought to be pretty important. And it was basically to get a truck that's specific for forest fire initial response, which none of the fire departments have at this time. So that's in the works. We received the report for the wood smoke reduction program and decided to renew it and roll the program out again and support the program for 2024. And what that does is it provides grants to households who want to change their old wood stove to a more efficient burning stove or to natural gas or some other form of making less smoke. And it gives grants. There's different grants for different things. And you look at the little table and it tells you you can decide what you want to do and then look at the table and apply for the grant that is applicable for that. And it's on a first come, first serve basis. So when you apply for those grants, if they've run out of money, then you won't get one. So it's best to get on that right away. The Northside Fire Department amended their service boundary at the request of Klahman Nation to exclude the areas that are now being covered by the Klahman Nation that used to be covered by Northside Fire Department. So, and we're looking at an alternative meeting schedule, which is not all that interesting, but approved some board training too. And I think that's what I got out of that meeting. Hopefully I didn't miss too much.
Councillor Doubt, do you have any?
Oh, I've got nothing to add, Mr. Mayor.
Very much. Okay. We'll now move to item 9, which is bylaws. The first one is the draft bylaw 2738, municipal solid waste collection.
So Council, Rod Fraser is going to actually, if you have any questions related to that, he's here. Thank you.
Councillor Doubt.
I'll make the recommendation in the package, Mr. Mayor, that the City of Powell River Municipal Solid Waste Collection Bylaw number 2738, 2024 be read a first, second, and third time.
Seconded by Councillor Southcott. Any discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. 9.2 is a proposed bylaw 2739 housing agreement, a bylaw to authorize a housing agreement. And it is the proposed bylaw 2739. Councillor Almeida.
I'll move that the City of Powell River Housing Agreement Bylaw 2739-2024 be adopted.
Seconded by Councillor Doubt. All in favor? Passed unanimously. And do we have the motion with regard to? So we will now move to committee recommendations, 10.1, which was, yes, Councillor Almeida.
Mr. Mayor, as we voted on the amended agenda at the beginning of the meeting, we're going to jump to 11.3, 11.1, and then do 10.1. Oh, gotcha. My apologies.
Thank you. All right, 10.1. Development Permit 363 BC Wildfire Service Powell River Fire Zone Lease Area. It was brought forward from the Committee of the Whole on February 13th. Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor. I will move that development permit 363 to facilitate the placement of a modular office building at the BC Wildfire Service lease area, legally described as Leasehold Area Plan EPP 114505 in blocks F and J, District Lot 5118, and blocks A and C, District Lot 5119, Group 1, New Westminster District, be issued subject to receipt of the associated landscape security deposit to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning Services.
Seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. And just for people in the audience that may be looking at the other agenda that was published, there have been a few changes for efficiency, as Councillor Almeida had pointed out at the beginning. So we'll go, Councillor Doudt.
I'm just going to try to jump ahead here. This is item 11.1, and the heading is Terms of Reference Clarity for the Committee on City-Owned Properties. And to remind everybody, we received some communication on that from the committee just at the beginning of this meeting, and we all, I think, all received it by email this afternoon. And they're looking to have their terms of reference clarified to make the committee more effective, and I think we should spend some time thinking about it and talking about that. So I'm going to make a motion to refer this to the next committee of the whole meeting so that we can have a full discussion on it.
Seconded. And could I just, the Deputy Corporate Officer has just handed me a motion which was provided by 4 members of the committee. Were they requesting that that be dealt with tonight?
Mayor, it was requested that the letter be added to the agenda tonight. That was just provided in case, I put it in front of you in case it was something that you wanted. Every member of council has that motion in case that's something somebody wants to move.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have a motion by Councillor Doudt, which has been seconded. Councillor Doudt.
I just want to explain why I'm doing this. I think we need to take our time thinking about what this is. You know, I made a motion actually quite some time ago to create the committee because I thought a committee of the citizens could provide advice to council that would be useful on dealing with city-owned properties and helping to develop them, hopefully for housing and other things that we need. I don't want to make a rush decision on this. I think it's something we can take time making a decision on. You know, they had a meeting just at the end of January. I think the previous one was September. We're not having meetings every day on that committee, and I think waiting for a week or two until we have our committee of the whole meeting and taking time to really think about what this council wants to do is a good idea, rather than just disbanding the committee, as is one of the suggestions. I think we should take some time to think about it.
Any additional, Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Your Worship. I do think a conversation among council would be helpful prior to jumping to decisions on this item. I think forming committees requires efforts from everybody. The investment put into it deserves a little bit of thought. I think there's really valuable work that committee could do, provided they were getting the extra direction that they wanted. I'm not entirely sure that we're ready to do that tonight. So if we're to provide more direction, we were going to need to talk about it for sure. If we want to disband it, I think it deserves a conversation first, and that I'm in support of the motion.
Any further, Councillor Almeida?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question for staff. I'm sure this would be the case, but just to cover all bases, do we need to also request that the letter that we added to the agenda will also get put onto the committee meeting for the whatever next date is, or is that just assumed, or do we need a motion for that as well, assuming that this current motion passes?
Through the chair, I'll defer to the Deputy Corporate Officer on this one. Thank you.
Through the chair, in anticipation of council needing all the information, we typically try to attach every relevant documentation we have, so we'll be sure to attach it.
All right, see no further discussion. All in favor? Passed unanimously. We will now move to 12.1, which was 10.1. Anybody's in the audience is following the agenda, and that is a reconsideration motion. Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd actually like to read a slightly different motion, and that is, I move to rescind the amended main motion from the January 30th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting that reads, that item number 2 of intergovernmental relations be changed to say that council will consult city residents and hold the equivalent of a referendum to ask, do you support a name change for the city of Powell River at the 2026 municipal election? And I'd like to speak to that if there's a seconder for that.
We have a seconder.
Thank you, Worship. It is my understanding, on advice from staff, that to change the language of this, it would be more appropriate to do it this way procedurally than the way that was originally suggested. And very simply, my reason for moving this and my reason for supporting this is that the word referendum, I believe to be confusing because it is no longer a word that is used officially in government language. And it doesn't convey what we would be able to do. So I don't believe that the original language that we used in the item that I read really does convey our intentions clearly. And if my motion to rescind passes, I believe Councillor Elliott has a motion for alternative language to move.
Discussion on the motion. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we all admit that our meeting of the January 30th was very, very long. I was chair of that meeting. Some of that language was proposed on the fly. We didn't have an awful lot of time to think about it. And I didn't, as chair, have had a lot going on. So I don't believe I had adequate opportunity to express how important it is to ensure that the polls that we have or the votes that we have are structured in such a way that they are following principles of good governance. And I don't think we should be putting language in our strategic priorities that is not reflective of what we can legally do. We can't legally have a referendum. That's not something a municipality can do. And I wanted to use accurate language so that we don't mislead anybody into thinking that that's something we can do when we can't. And I also wanted to be sure that we don't decide today what the best language to put in the question is, because that is part of a different process that you need to approve separately, and it's usually developed through a staff and legal teams and information gathered to make sure that the question is appropriate to what you're doing. So I didn't think that specific language in a strategic priority was the way to go for what the question would be. I do think that people misunderstood what I meant when I was speaking on that day, and I would like to have the opportunity to do that again. So I'm in favor of rescinding this motion and trying to get the words right.
Great. I'm going to speak to this. I'm opposed to this motion to rescind, specifically on two grounds. Number one, we debated this issue at January 30th meeting. My motion to have a vote equivalent to a referendum be held at the next general election on the question, do you want to change the name of Powell River? And that was passed. Councillor Elliott proposed an amendment to change this, and that was defeated. This motion is another attempt to amend my motion, which was passed. The motion would bring significant uncertainty as to how, when, where, and who would get to voice their opinion. The words equivalent to a referendum are very concise and clear. The city can have referendums. We had a referendum on spending $3.2 million on a new library. So the words equivalent to a referendum makes it very specific that it will meet the requirements of the provincial government, which is that there will be consultation and hearing from the electorate what their thoughts are. To spend numerous hours at council further debating this issue, and I'll quote Councillor Doubt at the January 30th meeting, we have discussed this at length. There have been amendments which were defeated. It is time to move on. I would much rather see us spend our time helping to create housing in Powell River. The concept of a housing authority is going to require significant energy and time of staff. So I think it's time that we put this to bed, because if we don't, over the next 2.5 years, we're going to have multiple motions coming back to council. We're going to have more legal opinions. And I think it's going to demonstrate to the electorate that we're unable to make a simple, concise decision that meets the requirements of the province for considering a name change. Councillor Doubt.
So I hate to do it, but I've got a process question that I'm asking. And what Councillor Southcott is moving is he's moving to rescind language that was agreed on January 30th. He's suggesting that if that succeeds, then Councillor Elliott will make an alternative resolution for new wording, which I assume is going to be the one that's in our agenda package. Mm-hmm. And that may or may not pass. And my question is, if Councillor Southcott's motion succeeds, and if Councillor Elliott's motion succeeds or doesn't succeed, what will happen when we get to the item of the draft strategic priorities plan? And what wording will we be discussing then?
Through the chair, at that point, if both of those motions pass, I would suggest using the, if you make a motion to adopt the draft strategic priorities, I would suggest adding as amended at the end to incorporate the changes that were just made, if changes are made.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know how that would turn out. I wanted to make sure I understood the question. I wanted to make sure I understood how that flow is going to go before I make any comments. I see Councillor Isaacson has her hand up, so I'll speak later on whether I think it's a good idea to do the rescinding or not.
Councillor Isaacson.
Yeah, also a procedural question. Also, if this motion to rescind passes, but the motion that Councillor Elliott plans to put forward fails, then what's on the floor in the strategic priorities document?
Original.
Through the chair, it would stay the same as what's in the document currently, because the motion to rescind would rescind all of those changes to item 2 of the intergovernmental relations piece. And so then it would just go back to that motion never happening.
But that motion happened and that created the draft strategic plan that's in the agenda today. So
Right,
we revert back to how it was worded previously.
Sorry, yeah, the previous wording. So again, if you're adopting it, adopt it as amended, but it would be the previous wording that would have been attached to the January 30th.
Okay.
Councillor Baum.
Thank you, Worship. I'll say a few words about bringing back motions. I'm sure the public is sitting in their seats tonight and they're all wondering, what the heck are we up to? Because it sure isn't clear to me. I have been here for 15 years. And we worked under a government rule that when motions were passed, according to Robert's Rules of Order, that they couldn't be brought back by those that voted that were defeated. So tonight we have a motion trying to be brought back and changed by those that got outvoted. We have a motion. It's plain and simple.
Excuse me, Councillor Palm. What is your point of order?
Just the correction to Mr. Councillor Palm's last statement, Councillor Southcock's motion or his motion to reverse, sorry, rescind, thank you. The motion, Councillor Southcott was in favor of that motion, which is why he's chosen to rescind it. He was not against the motion at that time.
So that's what's confusing to me, and I'm sure it's confusing to the audience, what exactly we're talking about here tonight. Because when you keep bringing back these motions that have been passed, and you keep rehashing them till you get your way, you're looking really silly in the public eye. Because that hasn't happened up until now when I've been here for 15 years. We had a process. So I reached out through our staff today to our legal department. And it was interesting, the answer I got back that was referring to our procedure bylaw. And I'm sure council has seen it. And there was 2 statements. One, you can't bring back a defeated motion. And secondly, that according to our procedure bylaw, a councillor could bring back a motion for reconsideration. So you've got a paradox at play here where we don't have the answers we need to conduct our business clearly. So I would like to just say we should rescind the whole discussion here tonight because our legal counsel recommended in the email that we need to revisit our procedure bylaw in relation to the Robert's Rules of Order and the community charter as a whole, so that we have something crystal clear to work from. because right now it's a dog's breakfast. So I'm not in favor of any changes here tonight, Your Worship. We should deal with this as part of our priority list, not a strategic plan, which, as we heard from the audience tonight and the delegation, still needs a lot of work. There we are.
Councillor Doubt, you had indicated that you wish to comment.
I do. No. What can I say? You know, I agree with Councillor Palm that we have to find some way to make final decisions on the board. You know, the motion to rescind and this, and we're taking a really complicated path to get to an end, and the path doesn't necessarily go in a straight line. And I agree that we probably need a procedure bylaw that identifies where we would go a little more clearly. At the end of the day, the language that Councillor Elliott's proposing, to me, is not significantly different than what's in the package already. It's not going to make an insurmountable difference whether we choose one piece of language or the other. But you know, I'd like to hear from others who'd like to say what they want to do with this, because I really will make up my mind on what I hear. I hear what Councillor Southcott said. I'd like to hear what other people have to say on whether it's a good idea to do the rescinding or not.
Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor Wasno. I mean, I have opinions on the possible motion that might be made if things get rescinded, but I want to just speak to the rescinding motion at this time. I think, like, I agree. I don't think council should have to re-debate things. And I think this is why it's so important that when we're having discussions, we have the information that we need and that we have motions in advance. So our procedure bylaw talks about, you know, motions being made in advance and distributed to all council members. And so that's why, for example, Councillor Elliott made a notice of motion. It provides everyone the time to think through, to plan their speaking notes. I see the mayor speaking notes. I brought some speaking notes tonight, and maybe others have as well. And you know, another item that there wasn't clear information on at the time of the January 30th meeting, you know, Councillor Doubt was under the impression that we were required to have an opinion poll, and that was not my understanding. And so making sure that we have all the information so that we can make good decisions is really important. And so I don't think it's ideal, but I think this is an indication of why it's so important for us to provide each other advance notice of our motions. The mayor made a motion that passed at that meeting, but the first time we heard it was when you spoke those words at the meeting, and so it's hard to react to the moment going, okay, what do I think about this? What are my arguments for and against? And so I think this is what Councillor Elliott's speaking to, and if Councillor Southcott is making this motion, I'm assuming it's because he has thought more on this. Maybe he's received new information, I'm not sure, that leads him to want to make this decision. So in general, I don't think it's great for us to be bringing back things that we've already decided. But I've shared why I think in this case it's reasonable. Thank you.
Councillor Almeida.
Back in December, the 7 of us sat around the table and workshopped the ideas that came together in the priority list that we see in front of us. We had a list of, I don't know, 50 or so different ideas. Actually, I do know because I've got them all written down. We had a list of 50 ideas. We voted them all. And then we discussed and wordsmithed and came up with the 15 that showed up on that agenda on January 18th. And then, even though that was approved, certain councillors said that wasn't approved. I've got all the votes that showed that all those 15 had at least 4 members of this council agree to every one of those 15. And so I find it quite convenient that now that, on January 18th, when it came to the agenda, certain members of council said, wait a minute, we need to go back and review some of these things, even though we had all voted on them a month earlier. And certain members of council were willing to do that to get to the proper decision. So changes have been made on both sides of this matter. And so I'm completely understanding why that's the case. And it's not a perfect document now, not to say that one or two changes are going to make it completely perfect as well. But it's just interesting how when the decision to change is not in favor of certain councillors, then all of a sudden we make a big deal about making a change when those councillors also requested the change.
I ask my fellow colleague to be respectful of other councillors.
Apologies. I'm good.
Good. All right. I would just like to again reiterate that the words public poll, if my motion is rescinded, we will spend the next 2.5 years debating what a public poll is. The option is to accept the language equivalent to a referendum, which is in line with what the provincial government requires if there is a request to do a name change. Without that, you can expect, depending on the various outlooks on this, that we could spend considerable amount of money on legal advice, court cases, etc. So there is no doubt in my mind that the words equivalent to a referendum would put us in the best position to respectfully address the question that the Klamath Nation has asked for us. And it's a question that could be answered in a timely fashion rather than having this prolonged. Any further discussion before I call the motion?
We have the motion reread.
Through the chair, the motion on the floor is that the amended main motion passed at the January 30th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting that reads that item number 2 of the intergovernmental relations be changed to say that council will consult city residents and hold the equivalent of a referendum to ask, do you support a name change for the city of Powell River at the 2026 municipal election be rescinded?
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'll call the motion. All in favor? Opposed? The motion passes by a vote of 4-3. Okay, we'll now move to the Councillor Elliott's provided a motion. Would you like to read that motion?
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. So I move that Council amend the draft Strategic Priorities 2024 to 2026 Intergovernmental Relations Priority Number 2 to read, take substantive steps toward reconciliation with Klamath Nation by engaging the public on the topic of a name change, including a possible new name, leading up to the public opinion poll timed with the 2026 municipal election.
Seconded by Councillor Southcott.
I would speak to that motion, please,
Yes.
Your Worship.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. So one of the points I wanted to make very clear and that I was hoping people would understand, it is not the yes, no that I have any issue at all with. It's when you put a question before the public, it must have the implementation of both answers clearly defined. So if you vote no, it's the status quo and everybody understands what that is. In all fairness, if you vote yes, how do we implement that if there is no alternative name on the ballot? What do we do with a yes vote? There is no clear direction. The public doesn't know what a yes vote stands for. So it's super important that when you're having polls that are deciding big questions, that both sides, the no and the yes, are equally defined and people understand what the change is going to be. So if we vote yes, it's going to change to, and we know what it is. It's never appropriate to ask a question with a status quo bias by not defining what yes means. And so the wording that I have is different in that it suggests that we need to define the yes equally with the no, and that people know what it is they're voting yes for. So that isn't the case with how we had it before. And the consultation that we have with community, I don't think it should be restricted to people who aren't in high school or aren't adults of voting age. I think we should be allowed to listen to all of the impacted people, and the provincial government says just that. So restricting our scope of consultation and inclusion is not a good idea for this process. So I have proposed this wording because I believe that is more inclusive and better represents what is a good process for moving forward to deciding what it is we want to vote yes for or no for. And that is why I think this wording works better and is a better choice.
Further discussion? I would, Claire Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor Wasno. I've thought a lot about this motion and how it compares to what I would ideally like to see. I think I do appreciate Councillor Elliott's work into making this proposal. And what I like about the motion is it ensures that a possible next name is part of the engagement and helps define what a yes question might be. I think a lot of the anxiety around a name change is not knowing what a name might be. People are concerned that they wouldn't be able to pronounce it or spell it easily, or just even what it might be. We got a lot of letters from the public, but there's a few sections of letters from the public that stood out for me. And these are two quotes in particular were not from people pushing for a name change. In fact, I don't think they're particularly supportive of it. But one of the reasons being they don't know what the name could be. One person wrote, "What is the name proposed? I pay a ton of taxes in Pell River. Don't you think I should know what the proposed name is? Does anyone? Do you know what the proposed name is? Does it seem right to you that there is a name change proposal yet nobody knows what the new name is? Seems like a little cart before the horse." And I agree. The second person writes, "I also believe that if a name was put forward that was palatable to the tongue and had a bit of flair to it for the city, that we would deserve to have this privilege. I think you would get the support you want, and this name change could be a past issue." So I think exploring a possible new name is crucial so that people know what they are expressing support for or opposition to. So I support reference for possible names in this motion. I think a lot of the anxiety expressed to date is related to the uncertainty and is the reason, Councillor Palm, that you reached for the name that you did because you didn't know. You wanted to reach for something, and I think having a name that is clear would help us move forward. I believe it's a better motion than what was in the draft brought forward tonight, but there's other parts that I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the specificity of having an opinion poll aligned with a municipal election. I do like it in that it sets a timeline for us and it indicates to staff this is a priority, get moving. We have a timeline that we want to express to the public. But I'm concerned that it sets an expectation of the public that we may not be able to deliver on. Actually, having an opinion poll relies on so many factors: staff capacity, funding, logistics, provincial government direction. the public should have clarity, but I don't think we're actually able to give them clarity yet. We haven't discussed a way forward with the provincial government. The provincial government has been clear that they do not require an opinion poll, but they do require robust engagement. And they've outlined some things for us, but it's not totally clear. And so if we put this proposed wording in our list and then we go to them with our plan and they tell us, well, you can't actually do it that way, we might need to go back to the public on process yet again, confusing things. So it's just a concern for me. I don't think it's insurmountable, but it's not ideal. We also, as a council, have not really discussed the 11 recommendations of the joint working group and the 9 that are board directed at the city. I think they're nuanced and balanced and do include reference to an opinion poll or referendum or assent voting, but after other steps have been taken. So I think that your intent in this motion could include that, but that would be for council to decide later on when staff give us options on how to implement this policy. Also, I know at the January 30th meeting, I expressed my opposition to an opinion poll, and it is one way to gauge public opinion. I think when I express that I don't want reference to an opinion poll on a specific date, people are concerned that I want to take democracy away. And so I want to be clear that I agree the public needs to have their views heard and recorded, and that their wishes have been made clear. But I want to add some more clarity to my views because I was speaking off the cuff on January 30th. So voting is one common way to gauge public opinion. It's definitely the tidiest democratic act. It's very clean. It's simple. But it would only gauge public opinion of those who vote. Youth under 18 are excluded. A member of the public wrote to us that the name change is not an issue for the past. It's an issue for the future. And youth in this community have a right to participate. They deserve a say in the community they will be stewarding when we are all long gone. And I agree. Many letters speak about council needing to represent the will of taxpayers, but representing taxpayers only is not my role. My role is to represent everyone in the city and to make decisions that I feel are in the best interest of the city. So surely my role is to consider youth as well, or renters that sometimes get excluded from the taxpayer category. I also need to be concerned about things like our community reputation, brand, the costs and opportunities associated with a potential name change. And tying it to with a bit of lack of clarity right now, it's unclear who could be included. Ultimately, the majority of people who could vote in a municipal election don't. We have higher voter turnout here compared to other areas in BC, but the percentage that we have is still in the 40s. So voting may seem like the easiest, most natural act to those who've been doing it for 20, 40, or 60 years, but it's not for many. It's incomprehensible, I think, to some, and I understand that incredulity, but there's a wealth of research on barriers to voting for young people, young parents, workers, etc. We'd like to think that everyone should and can vote, but they don't, and their views still matter. There are other methods of democracy beyond voting, like deliberative democracy. New Westminster has recently implemented a community advisory assembly, selecting 36 people through an anonymized process to attempt to have the assembly represent the census profile of the community to sit for a 1-year pilot term and advise council through a public process. Citizens' assemblies are excellent at coming up with solutions to thorny or polarizing issues. Anyways, so basically what I'm saying is I'm looking to the will of the rest of the council. I could vote for this motion because I think it's better than I guess the current alternative has been rescinded. So I think it helps provide impetus and to move forward on this and engage the public and make sure that people have clarity on what they are providing support for and against. But I also want the public to be, we need to educate the public on what the province expects of us. They do want us to gauge public support. They want us to show the results of our public engagement and how they turned out. We also have to have consulted with other local governments and public agencies, and to demonstrate a case for a name change. And so the public needs to be clear that an opinion poll could be an important step in gauging public opinion, but it's not binding. And I want the public to be clear. I want the public to have clarity. I think it's a really important piece, understanding public will to this process, but we are not there being able to make a decision yet. So I will likely support this motion because I think we need to move forward. But I do, like, it's probably not my dream motion, but it represents enough of what I care about that I'm willing to support it. Thank you.
Before Councillor Palm and Councillor Dowd have, I would like to comment because Councillor Isaacson has provided some misinformation today. First of all, the provincial government is very exact. They want consultation with the electorate, and they want feedback from the electorate before they will consider any request to a name change. Secondly, in a democracy, it's good practice to address the questions that are asked of you. The Tla'amin Nation has asked us if we would consider a name change. So there's no point taking our own personal interests and expanding that. To show respect to the Tla'amin Nation, we consult with what's required by the province, which is the electorate, and then we give them the exact request that we got from the Tla'amin Nation. So we take our own personal interests out of this, and we simply follow democracy and what is in the document that we received from the provincial government. Councillor Palm.
Yes, Your Worship, through the chair, well spoken, to the point where the citizens of our community, the electorate, need a voice. That's who I represent sitting here. Unfortunately, fortunately, no matter which way you look at it, this process is so divisive, it's beyond belief. I've never seen anything like it in my 15 years sitting here, and I feel very sad. I can't tell you how my heart is sinking here this evening, because it wasn't supposed to be a public diatribe on this situation. We had passed a motion which, in my opinion, 2 weeks ago, would have allowed a cooling off period, because everybody's got a different opinion on this. It's not an easy ask, and it's causing so much harm. And when I say harm, it's causing harm. So my problem with the motion on the floor is this. When you are asking for all of the things that it references, you are asking for a substantial amount of money to be spent to do this. Our coffers are bare. The city's coffers. Tla'amin is asking for this. So they should be applying for funding if they want to go down this road of education and all the rest to hopefully help us out. We can't, ask. It's going to cost a great deal of money. We have a motion already that we can work towards and allow our people to have a say on where this goes. It's that simple. Rushing it, you're just going to keep inflaming and fanning the fire. And that's the last thing I want in this community. I don't think I have to say any more. You know where I sit. And the more I say, the more trouble I'm going to get myself in. So I think I'll stop right there, Your Worship.
Councillor Dowd.
Well, I'm going to be,
Sorry, Your Worship, I have to say one thing because I want the camera to pick this up. When the cameras from Tla'amin first started coming in, there is some kind of waiver that you can sign so that your face doesn't appear in the film and your comments don't appear. I'd like to be able to have a copy of that so I can sign it before you leave tonight. Thank you very much.
Councillor Dowd.
well, Councillor Dowd, I'm always happy to be on camera. Hi, Global. Hi, Tla'amin Nation. Hi, everybody that watches online. And a lot of people are watching our procedures online, and they're welcome to listen to everything I say. Don't necessarily like the way I look, but you can listen to whatever I say and send me all the letters. Keep them coming. But I'm going to vote in favor of this. It's not significantly different in my mind than the previous one. It does what I think it needs to do. It gets in 2026, over a year from now, just about 2 years from now, to an opportunity for the public to put their name on a ballot and decide what they want to do. What the province requires is a clear indication of public support, a robust consultation, words like that. In my opinion, there's nothing with the present situation we have in town with people on one side and people on another to get a clear expression of opinion without having some kind of an opinion poll. That's why I approve it. It's not a perfect solution, but it's the best one we've got. I'd like to vote in favor of this change, get on to approving our strategic plan if we can talk about all of the 15 actions among our 4 different headings on our strategic plan so we can start working on the various things that we have to do, including working on a name change between now and 2026. So I'm in favor of this. No, I know it's not perfect. And I know people on both sides of the question will be angry at everybody who votes one way or another on the decision. But I'd like to get on with it. This is not a perfect solution, but it's the best one we have in front of us. I'd like to vote on it and move ahead.
Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Mayor. I supported your original motion because it promised to me to move us forward, and I want to move us forward. I also supported it because it's inclusive. This one, though, I support the change after having rethought the original language because I feel it is more clearly representative of what we need to do. Plus, I support Councillor Elliott's reasoning that it gives both sides of the question fairer and more equal representation. I do remember the provincial government's proportional representation assent voting, or what we used to call a referendum. And one side of that question was really easy to understand. It was, no, not going to do that. The other side was, holy crow, how do you even understand what the option was? So this is a reason why this is one of the reasons why I support this, but the main reasons are because it gets us going again, as Councillor Dowd has suggested and advocated, and it is more inclusive. And that's why I support this. Thank you, Mayor.
Could I just ask Councillor Southcott, what do you mean when you say it's more inclusive?
Thank you, Mayor. It doesn't matter whether, I think it doesn't matter which side of this question you're on, that we want to move forward. So it includes both sides of the question. I wish there weren't like 2 sides, but there are. This is just the fact of our situation right now. But without doing something about it, but without being able to include both sides, and without there being a sense of balance and equality to both sides, which this motion promises to me, but yours did as well. I think this is just cleaner. I like this word just a little bit cleaner. that's why I feel, that is what I feel makes this motion inclusive. I don't feel, as Councillor Dowd said, that it's really that much different than the one that we just rescinded. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor Wasno. 2 points. One, a question of staff. I know the wording in the language from the province talked about robust public engagement process. Can you clarify whether they require an opinion poll or a referendum, or like a referendum equivalent?
Okay, through the chair to council, no, they do not require that as part of the process. Thank you.
But yeah, consulting with the electorate is important, obviously. So the other thing I just wanted to express or to rebut, Mayor Wasno, you said that this shouldn't be about personal interest, and I took that quite personally. I am here to represent the best interests of the community. I know we might disagree from time to time what those best interests are. I take.
Could we please have quiet?
So I take my oath of office and my responsibilities seriously. I care deeply about the best interests of the community and the future that we're heading towards. And so I do take issue with your comments about it being about personal interests. I have nothing personal tied up in the outcome of this conversation.
Councillor Dowd.
Yeah, I'm just going to ask a question of staff. Councillor Isaacson referred to the province's requirements and whether they required an opinion poll or not. I know you've got communication from the provincial government about what information they require. Can you tell us what that is?
Through the chair, the province is leaving it to us to decide as a community, depending what council directs, on what a robust engagement process looks like. They have confirmed they do not require an opinion poll, referendum event, or any of those things. However, they've indicated that a poll of some sort could be used as part of an engagement process. So there's different elements that they're looking for, including a jointly developed process with the nation, and they've also indicated that they will lay this out more clearly for public communication should council direct that that's the way you'd like to go. I'm wondering if there's any more that you would like me to share. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like the CAO to read the section from the provincial government that states what their expectation is when receiving a request from a city for a name change.
Through the chair, if you'll just give me a minute to find the right section. Okay. So there are no legislative requirements such as an assent vote or referendum or alternative approval process for how community engagement must occur, as each community has its own unique set of circumstances. Considering other approaches in a robust engagement plan, such as community opinion poll, response forms, or survey to gather additional community input may be preferred. When the purposes for the name change are to advance reconciliation using thresholds, may create for or against dynamics, making it difficult for a community to develop a shared understanding or consider alternative approaches to a process. Let's see. And it goes on. Would you like me to just continue reading?
There's a section in there that specifically states that the city has to have both consultation and then feedback from the electorate.
Let's see. Okay. Okay, provincial decision makers will be looking for a cooperative and collaborative approach with local First Nations to develop a process to listen, educate, and engage the community to understand the different perspectives. The ministry recommends the phased approach so that the community is brought along in understanding the process and develops a shared understanding of the proposed process and how a decision for a name change may be reached.
A point of information, I think I know what you're referring to.
Okay.
Osno, and Councillor Almeida has it up on his computer. There are three or four bullets, and they have been in the public already.
Okay.
That the previous CAO brought to the previous council. So,
Okay.
Councilor Amita, would you like to read that?
Sure. There's been just a handful of emails going around this week, so easy enough for the CAO to lose one. But this is the one that the CAO sent to us this morning around 11 a.m., where she asked the province, are you able to confirm my understanding of what you shared about the expectations for engagement with community on the question of considering a name change? Am I on the right path so far?
Yeah.
Yeah, and now I'll get to it. Yep, just want to make sure. So the province's answer was, this included confirming that the city of Powell River is not required to hold a referendum or even an opinion poll. This is at the discretion of the city, but not a requirement of the province.
Okay.
talking
Okay.
Appreciate patience while we dig this out. Always nice everybody to have the same information.
Well, maybe I can add my 2 cents while Councillor Isaacson's looking that up.
Please.
I'm in favor of the motion. I'm not going to drag on the conversation, but I did have one thought, Mr. Mayor, that came to mind. You mentioned that we need to answer the nation's question, which is, would you consider a name change? And it dawned on me that that question was answered 2 years ago when it was asked. Because if the answer was no, we wouldn't have had a joint working group. We wouldn't have been having this conversation today. This is our consideration of a name change, in my opinion.
Thank you. Unfortunately, the provincial government requires a number of steps before an application is made to change. Sorry, the corporate officer, do you have additional information?
I believe I found the email that you're referring to. A poll can be, oh, maybe not.
I believe I have them. If
Councillor Elliott.
Project process and timelines. Changing the name of a municipality falls under provincial jurisdiction, with current guidance to local governments for name change processes that include undertaking a public consultation whereby the municipality engages with and receives feedback from the electorate, consultation with key stakeholders, rights holders, other entities the municipality has a relationship with, including First Nations, the regional district, and public agencies, and establishing a rationale for the change.
Thank you very much. So any further discussion on this motion?
I just, through the chair, wish to clarify just a couple of comments. One, Councillor Doudt referred to, Councillor Doudt earlier when he was giving his rationale for the motion referred to our strategic plan. No, we do not have a strategic plan. We're trying to work towards a strategic plan. And these are a priority list from individual councillors that came forward. So we're still working towards a strategic plan. Okay, we're still trying to refine that. Secondly, Councillor Doudt has said a couple of times in this chamber, at least two, that in his opinion, prior to tonight, we needed a public opinion poll. Because when we were talking about the process, we referred to the Haida Kwai process. They had a public opinion poll. That's how they got to the end of changing their name after 4 years. So like I've been saying all along, we need to work towards that election so it doesn't cost us anything. And a cooling off, rational thought. I just wish it would come to fruition, but this is just fueling the flames. I don't know how many times I have to say it. I love Powell River. I love Clahaman. I love the regional district. I love the entire region and have always worked towards the betterment of the entire region. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay. Any further discussion before I call the motion? All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion passed 5-2. So we now move, I believe, to item 12.2, which is the, sorry, could we just mute down the sound from the audience, please? We have draft strategic priorities referred from Committee of the Whole. We have a recommendation, Councillor Doubt.
So I'll take the bull by the horns here and recommend that the Strategic Priorities 2024 to 2026 document be adopted as attached to the February 15th, 2024 agenda. And if there's a seconder, I'll speak to it.
As amended?
As amended.
Seconded by Councillor Southcott.
So, and there's a section here about intergovernmental affairs, and under that section, there's a discussion about the name change. We've had a lot of discussion about the name change this week. But the document itself is a set of strategic objectives that were agreed on by Council on January 30th, except for the specific language on the name change, which we have just modified, and set some goals for what Council can try to achieve over the next 2.5 years. Well, a little less than 2.5, however many months it is. But it talks about intergovernment relationships with the city, the Tla'amin Nation, even the regional district is in our minds there. We're talking about intergovernment relations. It talks about healthy communities in a number of headings under each. It talks about environmental resiliency and economic viability. All of the things that are very important in this community if we're going to move forward. And they are, I guess, a list of achievements that are going to be hard to achieve, all of them. I remember the election campaign. I've heard a lot about that lately. But everybody that I remember talking at the election campaign was pointing out the need for housing, the need to do something about it. There's a very ambitious goal in there to create a housing authority. I, along with many other members of council, attended a 2-day virtual seminar put on by the UBCM about housing and the challenges for communities dealing with housing and specific problems about how to fund planning departments so they can deal with the province's legislation and the other goals that we want to make for affordable housing. So I think these set out a list of priorities that we can follow. No, it's not a plan, it's not a work plan, but it's a roadmap that hopefully we can put together. It's taken us quite a while to get here, but I'd like to vote in favor of this, give it to staff, so when they're writing reports that we always ask them to do, that they can take our strategic priorities into account and include them in each one of the reports they write, saying this is where council has asked us to go, and this is how this report moves the city towards that. So I'm in favor of it. I think we should vote for it and move on to the next items that we have.
Any further discussion? Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Your Worship. I support this. This document represents a whole lot of compromise and a whole lot of work, and that's how we move together. Nobody gets everything that we want. We compromise, we work together. I support it. Thank you, Mayor.
Any further discussion before Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the council we have this year is very diverse. We had a lot of conversations both in and out of camera where we all spoke of what we thought of. We made a lot of votes. Everything in this document was supported by a at least the majority of council. And we had to narrow down from, as Councillor Almeida said, about 50 items that were on the list of things. Not everything made that list, but I'm fairly proud that the ones that did make that list I feel are pretty important. And so I support the moving forward.
Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor Wasno. Yeah, I also support this plan. I know coming out of our session together in December, there were certain things that I would have loved to see on here that aren't, and there are certain things on here that I don't care as much about. But like Councillor Southcott said, this presents something hopefully that we can all support and work towards, and I do appreciate that it, like Councillor Dowd said, it presents a roadmap. It tells city staff that, above and beyond our core operations that are required under legislation, there are certain things that we want them to pay special attention to or move forward. And so, the delegation earlier today talked about priorities and first comes first. Well, first is actually keeping our water and sewer and roads, the bases covered. This is with our discretionary time, discretionary budget, seeking grant opportunities, and also, dedicating where time allows, significant staff time into making some potentially really amazing things happen. A lot of these things are already in the work and staff have been working on because they represent things that were important to the previous council as well. And so a lot of this is a continuation of the good work of the previous council and ongoing work of staff. But I was looking back on I keep a little 5-year diary, or not a diary, but like I make 2 lines every day of kind of what happened. And we've been talking about the strategic plan for over a year. I would like to move on, and I think this presents a decent case to be able to do so, and I support it.
Any further discussion? Councillor Palm.
Yeah, keep it short, to your worship. It's just unfortunate, as I've said a couple of times tonight, that individual priorities seem to be the priorities. We do not have a strategic plan. We do not have objectives with timelines and staff responsibilities and all the rest that we should have in a strategic plan. That's very unfortunate. And it kind of demonstrates where our council is at the present time, which is quite disturbing to me, but it is what it is. I just simply won't raise my hand because I know how the vote's going to go. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to move forward and vote yes on our list of priorities here and let the plan come together as a result of the priorities. The only thing for me, on a slightly humorous note, my attention to detail, would love to see the blue headers be over 2 lines versus 1, just so that they all match together, but that's just my attention to detail. So, because they're all 2-word titles, just make them all 2 lines.
Great. Well, I'd just like to comment that had I had this BHC a year and a half ago, maybe we'd be at a different place today, but unfortunately we aren't. So I'm going to call the motion. All in favor? Opposed? We have 1 abstention.
There's no abstentions.
Vote, Your Worship, with the one I don't raise my.
Thank you. Let's move on. We are going to be going into
Business.
unfinished business. There's no unfinished business. Do we have any questions from Mr. Galinsky?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question. With regard to the delegation 4.1, George Wall and Lauren Exter, Mr. Wall made mention of a report from the city with regard to asbestos. I am wondering, Your Worship, if that is publicly available.
Through the chair to Mr. Galinsky,
we will find out if we're able to release that or not.
I appreciate the response from the Chief Administrative Officer. Thank you, Your Worship, for the opportunity to ask a question.
Thank you. Do we have anybody in the audience that would like to ask a question? Great.
Hi, Lisa Moffat, Ethnon. First of all, congratulations on moving forward with strategic priorities. I think that's a huge weight off everybody's shoulders at this table and in the community. Easy question first. In January, the provincial government announced about $213,000 for the city of Powell River in a group of a $50 million package to disperse to communities to support housing. And I'm just curious what the city is doing with that $213,000.
Through the chair, we are using that to support our update and review of the Sustainable Official Community Plan. Thank you.
I was a bit disappointed this evening in the discussion around opinion poll and seeking the information from the provincial government about it. I want to point out that this information has been on the city's website since early 2022. And I am curious how council was not aware of that and how you were led to believe that opinion poll was required. Because it seems like you've been discussing this for a very long time. And having that as part of your informed opinion, which was incorrect information, seems very unfortunate.
Not aware of anybody on council that thought it was a requirement, but I will let individual councillors to comment. Councillor Doubt.
So in my opinion, for a long time, it has been obvious that in order to show robust public involvement and to make sure that we've had everybody had an opportunity to chime in on whether there should be a name change or not, we would have to have an opportunity for a public opinion, like it happened in Haida Gwaii when they did a name change out there, and respecting the fact that one of the first things we heard about a name change was a group that circulated a petition, got literally thousands of signatures saying they wanted to have an opinion poll. So I believe that if we didn't, as a city, have an opinion poll of some kind, that when we asked the provincial government to approve it, the people whose names are on those petitions would get a hold of the provincial government and say, we don't consent. And there would be a division in the community, and there would be a question whether the provincial government would approve our direction or not. So I'm hoping that people vote in favor of a name change when it comes along to it. And when we submit a request to the provincial government, there will be enough fact and enough information behind it to show that we have robust community support for doing that. That's why, in my opinion, an opinion poll would be valuable. And that's why I think it's necessary to be successful.
Councillor Palm and then Councillor Elliott.
Yes, thank you, Worship, through the chair. That is a very good question you asked here tonight. Why council wasn't aware of what was on our, we're all aware. We're all aware that an opinion poll perhaps does not have to be conducted, but as we heard tonight, we need to hear from the electorate. And I've heard from numerous citizens that in terms of how the joint working group process was conducted, that they do not feel that they've been given a voice, the process up until now. That's why they are pressing and want an opportunity to vote. It's as simple as that. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the question, Lisa Moffat. The motion I put forward today tried to incorporate everything I could to make it as inclusive of what we need in a balanced decision-making process. a motion that did not include an opinion poll would not have passed this council. And so it is not from lack of awareness that this is being put into the motion. It is that is what the majority of council sitting here today believe is important in our process. And so it's part of our process because of that.
Thank you.
There's another question.
Councillor Isaacson.
Just not directed to the speaker, but just a correction. A couple of folks have mentioned the name change in Haida Gwaii. The opinion poll was used to restore the name of Dajin Geeds, so specifically Queen Charlotte City. Thank you.
And then I have a question about, do we understand what the cost of an opinion poll would be tacked onto the next municipal election or not? Because there will be some additional costs, and I know that the city is really struggling with finances at the moment.
Councillor Doat.
What we've got here, that we're approving tonight, is a list of strategic priorities. It's not a work plan. It's not a budget. It's not a detailed layout of a schedule for public consultation. So I don't know what the cost is going to be. I know there is going to be a cost, and we'll be talking about that and trying to get funding from all the people who should give us funding, like the people who are telling us that we should do things like this, and I mean the federal government and the provincial government, who are asking the city and municipalities across the country to do the work that has to be done. So I don't know exactly how much it's going to cost. It's going to cost money, but we'll be getting to that as we make a consultation plan, we make a work plan, and we assign people to do the job.
Councillor Pond.
Thank you, through the chair. Just to be a little clearer and more concise on that, why we are working towards the election date is because we are to consult with the electorate. And by putting it on, having a question at that time is far less costly than having one outside of the election period. That's our rationale.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. And one last question. And perhaps this is planting a seed rather than a question that you can answer right now. But I'm curious, in what ways will you consider inclusivity of that opinion poll beyond what Councillor Southcott offered tonight, where there are people who are renters here, there are people who are not of voting age here, there are people who need support physically getting to an opinion poll. So I'm curious what kind of support council is willing to offer the community to reduce barriers to participating in a voting process.
As Councillor Doat said, that's down the road, and once it's been considered, we'll certainly make it public.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I forgot, my apologies, to Global. Did Global have any questions? I answered them all earlier today. Thank you very much. Yes, please come forward.
Mayor, Council, Ted Vizzitti, concerned citizen of Powell River. My first question is how much time has been spent by this council on this name change issue? Let's talk about just tonight at this meeting. Do you understand how much time is being spent?
I'll ask the corporate officer whether or not there is a record of time that we've spent on this issue at various council get-togethers.
Your worship, at this time, I don't have a tally of all the hours spent.
I didn't expect you to have it on the computer, but let's just look at tonight right now. We have spent just about an hour on this one issue. The other day, you spent the same amount of time, probably a little bit more, at the committee of the whole meeting on this, when this is a lot of time. And you could be spending it on a lot better issues. The citizens have come to you since the last council, and we have presented thousands of names in regards to this issue, in regards to having a referendum, which everybody is saying we can't have. Then we went to an opinion poll, just so the citizens could have some say. I talked to the ministry yesterday. They said that is all allowed to have. There is no place that has been taken out of the referendum system or an opinion poll. And the bottom line is, doesn't matter what we do, it comes down to the government to say if it's an official change or not. And then they will ask, like the mayor was saying, what have you done with the public? What have you gone and done with the public in the way of talking to them and asking them what to do? You are correct on that. And
thank you.
Very, very sincere on that part.
Okay.
I also am asking, do you understand what Port Alberni did when they were approached on this same subject?
To the CAO, do you have information on Port Alberni?
Through the chair, no, I do not, but we can certainly look into that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. The information that I have received is the Port Alberni mayor basically said, thank you for coming to us and asking, but we're fine at this time. So their time frame on this is a lot less than Powell River. We have.
I'm gonna have to hold you to questions.
Sounds good. Not a problem at all.
Great.
When is this council going to start listening to the people of Powell River? We have asked for a simple opinion poll. Name change, yes or no?
I think Councillor Dowd has indicated that it is now in our strategic plan, and we'll report back on that.
Okay. All right. Well, I thank you for your time, and there's been a lot of waste of time on this issue, but thanks.
Thank you. Any other?
Just a response to, I just wanted to respond. Is it all right?
All right.
Thank you, Mayor Wasno. Just, you had asked about Port Alberni, and they said, no, thank you, we're good at this time. Powell River, one of our governing documents is a community charter, which is a signed agreement between the two governments, the City of Powell River and Tla'amin Nation, that dictates when there are areas of a concern that one party brings to another, there are paths forward. And so it's not in the city's purview to shut down things without being considered about them. And so I think this is one of the things that we've talked about for over 20 years of being a leader in intergovernmental relations. It means that when the other party comes to us with a concern, that we have a path forward to taking that concern seriously. And so we're different in that way. Thank you.
Great. We'll go.
Your Worship, just to wish to
Community accord,
Right,
not.
Oh, sorry, community attorney.
She meant
I said
community accord, not a charter.
Thank you. We will now next go to our.
Mayor and Council, Don Edwards. Am I allowed to make a statement or do I have to ask a question?
I believe protocols would require you to ask a question.
Okay, I guess my question is going to be, how did all the councilors sit by here on Tuesday night or Tuesday afternoon and allow two students to attack Councillor Palm for over 21 minutes and not one of you stood up to defend him? He has spent 40 years helping the students in this town, coaching, spending his time on council, and in 21 minutes, you have ripped him of that 40 years. And all I can say to all of you people, shame, shame, shame.
All right. I would ask again if we could mute the audience. All right. Anybody else? Yes, please come forward.
Thank you for allowing me to ask a question. I'm Peg Campbell. I'm with the Namesake Film Group. And I have a question about how much consideration is going to be taken for the work that was done with the community engagement process. And that was quite a robust process with the joint working group, working out how to have engagement with the community to elicit opinions and recommendations around name change. As I understand it, there were at least 4 sessions and many people spoke. So I want to know, in terms of looking at the public opinion, how much consideration there's going to be for the work of the joint working group and for that community engagement process.
Great. Interesting question, which I'm sure each one of us have a comment for you on. I will ask before I comment whether or not any other councillors. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you for the question, Peg Campbell. So the community accord between the City of Powell River and Coahoma Nation, as you know, indicates that working groups are struck when we want to work together on an issue of concern. That is how the community accord indicates that we are to work on challenging issues where we may not be in agreement. So when Clauman came and asked about the name Powell maybe being considered to be removed, the city was not entirely seeing eye to eye at that time, and the council of the day was concerned about that. So we turned to our community accord to give us answers for what we do. And the community accord says, well, when you don't agree, you strike a working group and you try to sort that stuff out. So we struck a working group to figure out what kind of community engagement we should have. And we proceeded to do, as you know, some community engagement. The working group created some recommendations and forwarded them to council, which landed on the desk of a council meeting in August of 2022, which was right before an election. And so the council of the day asked those recommendations to be forwarded to this council to use as and respond to through the strategic planning process. So this council and all of the information that you're referring to is all part of the record of engagement that started back in the original 2019, I think it was it? I think, or was it 2020?
It was all 2022.
That's, yeah, but originally we started work in 2021. Okay, thank you for that. The process that we use as a council is we make decisions jointly, and for decisions that are not yet made, we can't really speak to them. So we may not have answers for things that are going to be addressed in the future. But the process to date has included forming a joint working group, receiving recommendations, and the council is working on and has made a priority in their document the reconciliation. And we're still considering all the things we need to do. We just today adopted strategic priorities that indicates we're going to go back out and consult. And hopefully that consultation process will be guided by all of the past consultation that we've already done. And so when we make those decisions, they will be made public, and we'll be likely making those decisions in a public forum, the way a council does. And hopefully that'll roll out and become clear as we move forward.
With regard to your question about consultation, there were over 2,000 people that signed a petition saying they felt they had not been consulted with. And one of the reasons that they stated was that at consultation meetings, they were not allowed to ask questions. And so the consensus at that time was there was no effective consultation with the community. And that's what we hope to achieve in order to address the question that Clauman has put to us. And we're confident that when we go to the provincial government, we have a basis for making an ask. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Dowd.
I'm going to try to address your situation there. And we have the 11 recommendations that the joint working group made. Council hasn't debated each one of those in detail, but we have the record. We have all of those recommendations. We have all the information in the report that led up to them. And I'm sure that that will come into everybody's thinking and everybody's minds when we are actually creating a work plan to go about how we're going to do further consultation. The objective always, every time I do consultation, every time I'm part of it, is to try to do it better than we did the last time. You know, and communication is something that I've learned through my maybe too long life so far, is that you can never do enough communication. Every time you try to do more, there's more you need to do. So we can take into account and we can have some fulsome debate on each one of those 11 recommendations of that committee, the joint working group, while we're trying to plan how that consultation goes on. And I think one of the most important things is active involvement of the Tla'amin people in a safe way so that we can have a back and forth, hopefully a respectful back and forth discussion about what everybody's needs are. So I hope that gives you some information that you were looking for.
Thank you. And then just a follow-up question. So the previous council put this onto this council's agenda to discuss and move forward. And then with the timeline that you're looking at, does that mean then this council will take it, ask the next council that's elected in 2026 to address this?
I think that's an issue that we'll have to wait until we have looked at the strategic objectives. And as Councillor Palm and Councillor Doubt and others have indicated, it is a process. And we'll certainly keep you and the rest of the public here informed of the process.
Hi again. As you know, as people talk, you get other questions pop into your heads.
I'm just going to interrupt you for a minute. The normal protocol is we will ask if there's anybody else, and then if there is anybody else, we'll come back and give you the second opportunity. Anybody else in the audience that has a question? Yes, please come forward.
First, I'd like to ask for the common camera to be turned off.
Oh, I'm sorry. You have to identify yourself.
Oh, Arthur Richards.
Thank you.
Gordon Avenue. I would like to have it turned off and turned away because I don't want to be videotaped.
I'm going to ask the Deputy Corporate Officer to comment on that.
Your Worship, I can't speak to Global, but our cameras have to be running to live stream the meeting legally, so the meeting will be recorded regardless.
No, I'm only asking for the Tla'amin camera to be taken off because I don't know what they're going to use. I don't know what they're doing with that film. Considering Maynard Harvey, or
okay, well,
his latest statement about white people being subhuman.
Just give us a moment here, and we'll get a opinion. Okay, thank you very much. It's all.
Thank you. My question, and I must have missed it because no one else has talked about it. It has to do with Councillor Elliott's motion. And in it, it says there will be a new name. Firstly, that seems to me you're pigeonholing everybody because someone's going to pick a name. And if nobody likes it, you're stuck with it. Okay, so there's no debate on the name. And in the second place, which one comes first? Do you pick a name and then have this survey? Or do you have the survey and go after the name? Because if you have the survey and you don't have the name, there's no point in having that in the motion. As far as I'm concerned, asking for a name in with the question whether you want to have this referendum or not, or survey or not, just muddies the waters. So
Councillor Elliott would like to respond to your question.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. So the idea was to consult with the community and find out what name to put on the ballot, so that when you have an opinion, it's would you like to change your name to whatever the community decides to put on the ballot? And if you would not like to change your name, you would say no. And if you do want to change your name to the name that's on the ballot, then you say yes. Without having a name on the ballot, there's no definition to what do we do if we say yes.
All you do is say yes.
Right, and then you change it to what?
Definition, but
yeah. So the fact that there is no clarity around what your name would be makes the question an unbalanced question. So when you have an asset voting process or a voting between two options, you need to know what they both are.
okay, I can see where you're coming from with that. So my next question would be, how much time are we going to spend finding a name? A name that people not only can understand, but pronounce?
Councillor Almeida.
If I can make an attempt to answer Mr. Richards' question. Based on our decisions today, we've kind of put the time to 2.5 years because that's when the question has to be. But in order to have the question even be an option on the 2026 municipal election, we'd have to have the actual question determined months in advance. So roughly, over the next 2 years through the engagement process, I kind of picture it to just imagine we were to get a new sports team. Or maybe the Kings decided we're going to change our name. We're not going to be the Kings anymore. We want to be someone else. Let's put it out there to the community, just like any new sports team would do. Let's get names there. The nation hasn't given us a name that I'm aware of. That's not been part of the process yet. And there's nowhere that I've read that says it has to be a First Nations name. It's a completely different thing. We can call it Paradise. We can call it Pineapple City. We can call it Big River. There's many things that it could be. And then through the engagement process, that will get whittled down to eventually we'll have a couple of choices. And that couple of choices then will have an informal poll to have the final name that people most likely might be interested in to get to the opinion poll that's going to happen on the municipal election. So it's not going to be just drawn from a hat, is the way I envision it, at least. I'm just speaking for myself, but I would just picture just like any new city getting a sports team. Community gets involved, they submit some submissions, and then it gets whittled down to a preference.
Well, I don't see this as finding a name for a sports team. What kind of a survey will we have when we have multiple names and no one can decide, or nobody likes most of the names? Are we going to have a survey for that?
I think what we've indicated earlier, that we're in a process, and when we have arrived at a process, we certainly will make it public at council and generally with the public.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So, any other questions before we? All right. Second question.
Thank you, Mayor. Earlier, you were talking about who can vote. What my question is right now, what is the legal age for voting?
Does our deputy corporate officer have an answer?
Yes, Your Worship, it's 18.
Thank you.
Okay, so that kind of answers all your other questions in regards to who can vote and who can have say on a referendum or an opinion poll or whatever you guys decide to do. Second one is the joint committee that you have talked about tonight. And I'm not sure if it was 2021 or when was that year. Doesn't really matter. They came up with 11 subjects that Councillor Doudt had mentioned that you're still dealing with. There's been a lot of issues go on in the city right now, and there's a lot going on because of tonight even. Have you ever looked into redoing this joint committee and putting new people on it and re-looking at what this city actually is requiring.
My understanding is no, unless the corporate officer will advise otherwise.
Your worship, we've had no direction to form a committee.
Thank you.
So what would it take from the citizens of Powell River to asking council to redo a joint working committee and get more people on that committee and see what changes?
Well, I just comment that there are a variety of ways at which the city and council ask for input. We have delegations. We have some members of the community that have put polls together and brought those to the public or to council. So those are certainly two options. Councillor Isaacson has another one for you.
Thank you, Mayor Wasno. I don't have an idea for another one, but I think your question and some of the questions from other members of the public tonight are looking for specificity that we can't give you yet. The strategic priority related to name change gives a bit of detail, but there's so many questions that need to be answered, and likely a lot of things that will be brought back to council, whether because we need to approve spending or because it is often a political decision. Staff give us options and we tell them which way they want to move forward. So we don't have answers. Councillor Almeida had some ideas on how he thought things might move forward. Those are his opinions. And I think we each have our own idea of how it might look, but we're also going to be relying on staff who have expertise or who can rely on others who have experience in these areas. And as Mayor Wasno has shared, when we get things going, we'll let the public know, but we're not there yet. We actually haven't spent a lot of time, to be honest, talking about name change. We've had a few hours max, plus the time reading all the emails. Granted, so it's not as though we've been deliberated and have a plan all set up. The conversation you see here is the conversation that we've had so far related to name change. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor Almeida.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question of clarity from staff. Mr. Vasuti asked about the age of voting, which for a legal vote is 18. Correct me if I'm wrong, though, for an opinion poll, because it's not a legal vote, the determination of who can vote on an opinion poll would then be left up to council to decide?
Through the chair to Councillor Almeida, that's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Actually, that's good information. And if it's held at an official election, then something I guess would have to be looked at, but I won't go into that one.
Thank you.
As for the working committee, yeah, I hope that we can do something and maybe look into something different. One last thing, as you are aware, and I'm not sure if you all are, there is an article that just came out in the New Westminster Times the other day.
I'm just going to suggest that I'm going to ask the Deputy Corporate Officer about protocols on questions.
Okay. I will ask straight question.
All right.
Not a problem. Is council?
Sure.
Excuse me, Councillor Doudt.
Yeah, it's getting close to 10 o'clock, and our policy.
What's that got to do?
I'll wait until it's quiet.
Sorry,
I'm suggesting that our policy is to have questions that relate to things that are on the agenda. I'm just encouraging people to relate their question to something that's on tonight's agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Doudt.
Okay. Very disappointed in your answer, Councillor Doudt. But that's okay. Because we're here now as a citizens, and this is our time with council to be able to talk to you and
ask a question.
And ask questions. So my question is council going to do anything in the way of asking for an apology from a Mr. Maynard Harry in regards to his words that was in an article in the New Westminster Times that attacked all people in Paul River, in BC, in Canada, with words such as
Okay, I'm just going to interrupt. This has not come to council, so council cannot comment.
Okay.
But
Reason I'm asking this is because at council, one of the council members was attacked the other day at a meeting and was asked for an apology. He stood up and did it in council chambers, and it was great to listen to it.
I'm just going to
Now I'm
interrupt.
just asking what council's doing
Right.
for Mr.
You're talking about protocols, and if this comes to council, then we will address it with our normal protocols.
Okay, I understand, and a letter will come to council then.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good night.
Right. Do we have any other? Yes, we do.
Hello, Robin Murray here again. I'll ask the question that is kind of what Mr. Vizzuti should have asked, could have asked. It was in regard to the community accord. It's been talked about a number of times tonight. Maynard Harry was the one of the signing people of that accord, and a person that I had much respect for many years. So according to the community accord, we're supposed to be respectful of one another. The newspaper article that was written quoting him this week was rather disturbing. I believe that council should ask, I would like to ask, will council ask for an apology from him or from the nation towards everybody? Because it was hate speech. One of my latest history books I've been reading is Adolf Hitler, written in 1976. And he refers to the Eastern Europeans, Russians, and the Jews as subhumans.
Yeah, I'm just
very
going to interrupt. It's essentially the same answer. Right now, we have not seen the article that you're referring to. It has not come either through staff or others. So at the appropriate time, we will address it. And it'll be a public statement as to how we wish to act. Thank you. Councillor Isaacson.
Yeah, I would just add, Maynard Harry is no longer an elected official representing Tla'amin Nation. He is an individual citizen, a resident of the region.
Excuse me, Councillor Isaacson. We've made the point that council is not aware of this issue. It has not come before us. So I would appreciate it if there's a consensus on council that we leave this until it formally comes to council. I'm seeing nodding of the heads. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Murray. Do we have anybody else in the audience? Do we have anybody online? One online? All right. Then we are at the stage of a motion, I believe, to, yes.
To adjourn.
Councillor Isaacson.
I'll second Councillor Almeida's motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you very much.